For more, let's bring in the Australian's foreign editor, Greg Sheridan. Hi there, Greg. So, do you think there should be hot mics?
Well, I think it's great to be with you, first of all. I think this is the first time we've spoken on air, and so I'm honoured. I think
Thank you so much for speaking out for me.
Not a bit, not a bit. I think having the mics muted helped Trump last time, but it helped him mainly because it controlled his hyper-aggressive urges. But Trump is clearly just behind now, so he should have a debate, whatever conditions Harris insists on. And Harris is ahead. So when you're ahead, you don't really want a debate because the debate might upset things. And when you're behind, you want a debate under any circumstances. So Trump should take whatever conditions are offered, but he should control himself and keep quiet so that he doesn't look like a bully when she's speaking, so that he doesn't look like a bully. And so that if, Kamala Harris, not as bad as Biden, but she is a bit famous for word salads herself, he should let her, make her own mistakes, so to speak. But he really needs a debate, absolutely.
So, say there is a debate. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think the expectations are now a bit too high for Trump. And Kamala Harris is not suffering cognitive decline like Joe Biden. She's not a very good performer in unscripted situations, but she will memorise 20 or 30 key answers to the obvious questions that are going to come up. All she has to do is look reasonably unflustered and reasonably confident, and he will hope she makes a mistake, and she will hope that he blusters and bullies and talks over her and so on, because that looks very badly for him. But it is notable that her handlers have kept her away from any spontaneous situation. No press conference, no in-depth interview, nothing like that, because she was basically a weak candidate. They have created a magnificent vibe around her. They're handling her as well as they handled Biden 4 years ago. And the debates is one of the few opportunities where she'll be subject to scrutiny in a way that is not scripted, can't be rescued by a teleprompter or by event handlers.
Do you think this sort of protection for Harris is actually going to backfire, because this has become a major point of criticism for the Trump team, that Harris is hiding?
Yes, I think it does hurt Harris. If she looks as though she's hiding, that does hurt her. But she can diffuse that, I think, relatively easily. It's not very hard to get a softball one-on-one interviewer, not like the tough interviewers you get on Sky, but, you could easily line up,
yeah. In Australia, we tear them apart.
Yeah. I mean, there's no hiding when you do a Sky TV interview, but she could easily line up a softball kind of pro-Democrat interviewer, and she could do a few semi-little unscripted things, by the side of the aeroplane where she only takes 2 or 3 questions. I think Trump really has to swing back to a hard policy message rather than his personal attacks on her. He certainly wants to generate as many unscripted moments as he can, but she's not like Biden. She's not going to kind of have a complete, obvious inadequate moment.
Meltdown.
You wouldn't think.
Greg, just changing topics to the Ukraine war, what do you make of the latest air attacks on Ukraine by Russia in light of the recent visit by the Chinese premier to Russia?
Well, China seems to be backing Russia more or less unconditionally. We live in a very dangerous strategic world where China, Russia, Iran and North Korea are effectively allied. They're providing each other with munitions, weapons, platforms and economic trade. China's
even
buying
mercenaries,
so much
I've heard.
Yeah, there's some evidence of that. And I think Ukraine has invaded Russian territory to get itself a bargaining chip. Russia is replying with a certain degree of savagery in its bombardment of civilian, targets. Russia is breaking all the rules of war here, and the international community is not really making it pay a very big price. I fervently hope that they can get to some negotiations fairly quickly. Probably can't happen until the presidential election in the US. And as I've said before, I think Ukraine will have to allow Russia to permanently occupy some territory. But on the other hand, Ukraine, I think, should be allowed to join NATO so that there's a real trigger if Russia goes over the border again. The Allies step in to help Ukraine. Otherwise, it just looks like there's just going to be endless suffering, especially for the people of Ukraine.
And on endless suffering, let's talk about the resumed ceasefire talks between Israel and Palestine in Cairo. Do you think that will eventuate in some sort of ceasefire?
It should have eventuated by now. The Americans very much want it to happen. The Middle Eastern powers, the Gulf states, want it to happen. But there's no doubt Hezbollah has wanted Israel to suffer the international reputational damage which it is suffering because of this ongoing war. It's also the case, I think, that Hezbollah desperately wanted a wider regional war. They wanted Iran, that Hamas wanted a wider regional war. They wanted Iran and Hezbollah to be at war with Israel and the Houthis and the other militias in Syria and Iraq, which are anti-Israel. They haven't got that as yet. I don't know how many live hostages they have still to trade. On the other hand, I think Israel is at fault for not working out what a post-Operation Gaza looks like, who runs the place, who produces the basic services, and so on. We've been on the brink of a ceasefire for a long time. The Americans said last week that Israel had agreed to the American proposal and it was just Hamas who was holding things up. But I'm not sure that Hamas the Hamas leadership wants a ceasefire. I just don't know. Sinwar, the leader, he will be killed the minute he surfaces. That's absolutely clear, whatever the conditions of a ceasefire. And it may be that they are still holding out in the hope that the Hezbollah-Israel conflict becomes a wider regional war. You'd think the logic leads you to a ceasefire at some point, but it's been going, as you know, Leigh, for a long, long time already. We're coming up soon for the first anniversary, and no real sign of a ceasefire so far.
Thank you so much for your insights. Great talking to you. Greg Sheridan, the Australian's foreign editor.